There is a war happening right now. Not on battlefields you can see, not with weapons forged by human hands, but in the unseen realms between heaven and earth, where ancient powers, older than empires, darker than death, are locked in combat for the fate of nations. And you are standing in the middle of it. In the book of Daniel, buried within one of the Bible's most cryptic passages, a celestial being appears to the prophet after 21 days of fasting and prayer. This being, radiant and terrible, speaks words that shatter every assumption about how the universe really works. He says, "The Prince of Persia resisted me for 21 days. Not a human prince, not a mortal king, but something else entirely, a demonic principality. A territorial spirit assigned to one of the greatest empires the world had ever known." This is not Sunday school folklore. This is cosmic warfare. And the Prince of Persia is just the beginning. Let's go back. Ancient Persia. The year is roughly 539 BC. Babylon has fallen. Cyrus the Great now rules the known world, and the Jewish people, exiled for decades, stand on the edge of liberation. Daniel, an old man now, has seen empires rise and crumble like sandcastles beneath the tide of God's sovereign will. But something troubles him. He fasts. He mourns. He prays for understanding. And then, on the banks of the Tigris River, the veil between worlds tears open. A figure descends, dressed in linen, his body like topaz, his face like lightning, his eyes like torches of fire. This is no ordinary angel. Some theologians believe it may have been a Christophany, a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ himself. Others say it was Gabriel or Michael. Regardless, his words are clear. "Do not be afraid, Daniel. Your prayers were heard from the first day. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me for 21 days. Read that again. An angel of the living God delayed. Blocked. Resisted by a demonic power assigned to the geopolitical soul of Persia itself. This is where everything changes. Because what Daniel glimpses in that moment is the terrifying truth. Behind every nation, every empire, every throne and crown, there are invisible rulers, principalities, powers, spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. And they are not passive. They are at war. The Bible calls them by many names: principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, cosmic forces of evil. The Apostle Paul writes in Ephesians that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against these very entities, organized, hierarchical, and terrifyingly intelligent. They are not demons wandering aimlessly. They are generals, governors, princes assigned to regions, cultures, ideologies, and nations. The Prince of Persia was one such being. His dominion, the Persian Empire. His mission, to influence kings, manipulate policies, stir rebellion against God's purposes, and keep the people of Israel in exile. For centuries, Persia was a place of paradox, sometimes benevolent to the Jews under leaders like Cyrus and Darius, sometimes hostile under rulers like Ahasuerus. But beneath the political theater, a darker script was being written. A demonic intelligence was pulling strings, whispering into the ears of advisors, inflaming hatred, and orchestrating delays against divine plans. And he nearly succeeded. For 21 days, this prince held back the messenger sent to Daniel. 21 days of silence. 21 days of Daniel thinking his prayers went unheard, until Michael the archangel, one of the chief princes of heaven, intervened. Only then was the message delivered. Only then did the war shift. But Persia was not alone. The messenger also mentions the Prince of Greece, who would soon rise. This suggests that every major empire, every dominant culture, had its own overseeing principality. Egypt, Babylon, Assyria, Rome. Each had a spiritual ruler working to bend history toward rebellion, idolatry, and the suppression of God's people. Think about that. Every geopolitical power you've ever read about in the Bible wasn't just a collection of soldiers and kings. It was a puppet regime animated by forces that hated the God of Israel and sought to drown his light in darkness. The 10 plagues of Egypt, Not just miracles, but a direct assault on the demonic hierarchy ruling through Pharaoh. The fall of Babylon? Not just politics, but the humiliation of principalities who thought they were untouchable. Daniel's vision reveals something chilling. The spiritual realm is structured like an empire. There are ranks, hierarchies, territories. And at the top of this dark monarchy sits Satan himself, the prince of the power of the air, the ruler of this present darkness. Beneath him, legions of principalities and powers, each assigned to nations, cities, and cultures. They do not act randomly. They are strategic, patient, and they have been playing the long game for millennia. The Prince of Persia's role was clear: delay, distract, and destroy. When God decreed that the Jews would return to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple, this demonic prince went to work. He stirred political opposition. He incited local enemies like Sanballat and Tobiah to mock and threaten the builders. He whispered lies into the courts of Persian kings, trying to reverse the decree. And for a time, the work stopped. The people grew discouraged. The vision dimmed. But here's the twist. The Prince of Persia was operating on borrowed time, because Michael, the great archangel assigned to protect Israel, was already in motion. The battle wasn't on earth. It was in the heavens. Sword against sword, light against shadow. And when Michael broke through, the floodgates opened. The decree was reaffirmed. The temple was rebuilt. And the Jewish people returned to their land, setting the stage for the coming of the Messiah. This is the pattern repeated throughout Scripture. Every time God moves, demonic principalities resist. Every time his people pray, heaven responds, but often through warfare we cannot see. Moses versus Pharaoh. Joshua versus the kings of Canaan. Elijah versus the prophets of Baal. Jesus versus the legion in the Gadarenes. Paul versus the sorcerers and idol makers of Ephesus. These were not just human conflicts. They were collisions between kingdoms, and here's where it gets personal. The principalities did not vanish when Persia fell. They did not retire when Rome crumbled. They're still here, still assigned, still working, because their mission never changed: to blind the minds of unbelievers, to steal truth, to kill hope, and to destroy faith. Every nation still has its spiritual overseers. Some theologians believe that the modern world is carved up among territorial demons, just as the ancient world was. Regions plagued by oppression, violence, corruption, and spiritual darkness are not random. They are governed. What does the Prince of Persia look like today? Perhaps he oversees ideologies that enslave minds. Perhaps he fuels religious extremism, political tyranny, or cultural despair. Perhaps he still whispers into the ears of leaders, convincing them that there is no God, no judgment, no eternity. His tactics may have evolved, but his hatred has not. But there is hope, because the same God who dispatched Michael to shatter the Prince of Persia's hold has already won the ultimate victory. At the cross, Jesus disarmed the principalities and powers, making a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them. Colossians tells us this plainly. The war is still raging, yes, but the outcome is no longer in doubt. The enemy fights from a position of defeat, and he knows it. His time is short. His kingdom is crumbling. And every prayer you utter, every act of faith, every declaration of truth is another crack in his crumbling fortress. Daniel prayed for 21 days before he saw the answer. But the answer was already on the way. The war was already being won. And the Prince of Persia, for all his power, could not stop the will of God. So here's the question that should haunt you tonight. If these principalities are real, if they're still assigned to nations and regions and cultures, what are they doing right now? What lies are they whispering? What plans are they orchestrating? And more importantly, are you praying like Daniel, fasting like he did, standing in the gap for your nation, your family, your generation? Because the war is not over. The princes are still scheming, but the King of Heaven is still sovereign. And he is still dispatching his angels to fight on behalf of those who call on his name. But what they didn't know was that the real storm hadn't even